Most writers think they understand what show don't tell is, and I will grant them that most of the time they do, but to a point. They know that behavior reveals emotions. They can understand that you don't have to say this character is angry if she is slamming cabinets or slamming doors or throwing dishes at the wall. That is real, that is valid, and that is showing. But that is also the most obvious version of it. And if your understanding of show don't tell begins and ends there, you are leaving so many different tools on the table that you are not using. In this video, I want to give you 6 ways of showing that most writers are completely overlooking. The first one you will recognize, but the last one, almost nobody thinks of it as showing. But by the time we get there, I think you'll see why it might be the most powerful version. So the first one, the most familiar version of show don't tell, is behavior. The character doesn't need to announce that they're angry if they are already interrupting another character mid-sentence. They don't need to tell you that they are anxious if they continuously, constantly check their phone, if they are over asking the same question again and again and again and again. The behavior is the emotion, and if it is doing its job, you don't need to explain anything in the narration. But here's where most writers stop, where they should keep going. Not every character expresses the same emotion the same way, and if yours do, you are not being loyal to the character, you're being loyal to yourself. You are showing the reader the same way that you process emotions through your character. Picture 2 characters who have just been completely humiliated in public. One of them goes loud and defensive, and they fill the room with noise because they feel like staying quiet is admitting that humiliation. The other character goes very still. They go much quieter than usual. They start being incredibly precise with their word because precision feels like control, and control in that humiliating moment is all that they have left to themselves. Both of those characters are humiliated, and neither of them are saying that, but they are expressing that humiliation in completely different ways. And that difference in how they express that emotion is how you're going to make your cast feel like they are completely separate from each other, that they are not interchangeable. The behavior has to belong to this specific character, not just the emotion. That is when it becomes showing for this particular character. The second technique of showing goes completely overlooked because it feels incredibly subtle. It doesn't happen in a single moment. It accumulates across the scene or across many scenes so that your reader starts to notice that accumulation. What a character continuously brings the conversation back to tells you exactly what is important to that character. This is what their brain returns to when it is given any amount of slack. For example, every conversation somehow always leads back to money. Money isn't even necessarily the topic of the conversation, but this character always finds a path back to money, even if that's not where the conversation is going. Someone mentions a vacation, and this character mentions cost. Someone mentions getting a promotion, and this character calculates what that difference in salary is out loud. Someone mentions that their kid's play is this weekend, and this character is wondering if that theater company has enough money in their budget. That pattern is not random. It is a window inside this character's psychology and what they think is important. Or maybe it's about respect or recognition, or whether they are getting the acknowledgement they feel like they deserve. Whether someone important was in the room when they did that thing that they should be proud of. Every story that they tell somehow always goes back to that respect, even if that's not the topic of the conversation. You don't have to tell the reader what this character values. Let that conversation keep finding its way to that home, and your reader will follow it. The third way of showing is what triggers your character. Because not everything gets a reaction. Most things pass through a person without leaving any kind of mark. But what consistently produces a reaction in your character? What always reliably pulls a character out of their equilibrium? That is where their insecurities and their pressure points live. This character is calm about everything. They are easygoing, they are easy to talk to, someone who handles disruption without a single flinch. Until their more successful brother is mentioned. Not the brother himself, necessarily. Just the mention of him, and then something shifts. Their posture changes, and the warmth in their voice suddenly disappears. And they move that conversation on faster than it needs to be. That is not a small detail. That is where this story is telling that this character gets exposed. Or another character only gets defensive when their work is questioned, when their competence is on the line. Everything else bounces off of them. Criticism of their decisions, their taste, their relationships. They can hold off all of that with a reasonable amount of grace. But talk about their work, and their work is different. The work is where they have put the most vulnerable version of themselves that has to be right. You don't have to explain any of that in the narration or in the dialogue or in any sort of exposition. You just have to show the reader the pattern, and they will figure it out. The fourth technique is what they avoid. Avoidance is one of the loudest things that a character can do. And most writers treat it like silence, as the absence of something instead of the presence of something. But silence is a choice, and choices reveal who we are. Every time commitment comes up, they don't respond. They make a joke that makes everyone laugh and makes the room continue on to something else. That is not personality. That is a defensive system. That's someone who learned a long time ago that humor is the most efficient way to keep the conversation going on to something else. Or another character shuts down completely every time the conversation moves toward their father. They don't leave the room or get upset, they just look like they're slightly less available. The quality of their attention shifts or shuts down. And other characters in the conversation, even the reader, start to understand that this is a touchy subject. That silence is information that the character is giving you and the reader, because whatever they are avoiding is the thing that they cannot afford to face. The fifth one: what does a character notice first? Every time a character enters a space, their attention goes somewhere first, and where it goes tells you and the reader exactly what kind of world they think they live in. One person walks into a party or an office and they start immediately looking for where the exits are. They're thinking about what happens if something goes wrong. It is a person who has learned at some level, at some point in their life, that it is incredibly important to know how to get out. Another person walks into that same room and they are noticing who is looking at them. It doesn't have to be paranoia. They're just taking inventory of who is looking at them, who is paying attention to them, who has status here, who has status in this room, who is looking at me. That is a person whose operating system runs on status. That is a person whose priority is social positioning in whatever setting that they are in. The sixth one, my favorite, and one I think is the most important, is what will they do without questioning it? And this is one almost no one thinks of as showing. And I want to be very clear about why it is showing, because it is doing something that the other five are not. The other techniques show you what a character feels and values and where they feel exposed. This one tells you what a character feels justified in doing, and that is a very different window entirely. The character goes through their partner's phone deliberately. They scroll through the messages, they look through the photos, and then they put the phone back right where it was. And they do this without any hesitation or any moment of guilt afterward. They don't have any conversation with themselves about whether this was okay or not. They didn't need to have that conversation, because they already resolved that issue. Somewhere inside their operating system, somewhere inside their own internal logic, a rule exists. If something feels off to them, crossing that line is permitted. They might even think that is required. They didn't decide in this moment. They decided a very long time ago, and now it just runs automatically. That automatic permission is characterization. It tells the reader more about this character's internal logic than anything they can say out loud or anything you can put in the narration, because a behavior under very deliberate choice reveals a character's value system. These are things that are so deeply held that they don't feel like choices to this character anymore. So showing isn't just behavior. It is anything that shows the reader how this character sees the world, what they return to, what sets them off, what do they avoid, what catches their eye, and what will they let themselves do without questioning it. All of that is showing. All of that is information that the reader can assemble without being handed the conclusion. And the more you let those things do the work, the less that your narration has to carry, the more you free it up to do other more interesting things. Because you're either letting the narration show it, or you are using it to explain it. Every time you choose showing over explanation, you are giving that reader the notion that I trust you to understand what I am giving you. And all of these different things accumulate to help your reader become invested in your story, to become immersed in it. And if you want to go deeper on any of this, exercises, craft guides, I have tons of free things available over on my Substack. I will put something in the description below for you. They just help you apply these exercises and these craft guides to manuscripts that you have started or ones you have not started yet in small, approachable ways. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you for watching.